into another dimension, a dimension of understanding. You are entering a place where reality collides with truth. There are no limits, there are no boundaries. This is Offplanet Radio.
The bankers in the back room. Get the president out of the way and hire Stanley Kubrick. Under the Masonic moon. Under the Masonic moon. Everyone hoped that the boys would come home soon. One more day and they'll drop from the plane and splash into the ocean. Under the Masonic moon. Braun and his conspirators got a free ride to the States. They turned Nazi into Nassau. They just couldn't wait. Under the Masonic moon.
That song may be one of the funniest, creepiest things I've ever heard, but it introduces well my guest tonight. We're not going to spend a lot of time with intros. He doesn't really need one, but I'll do that anyway. My guest for the first hour tonight is Jay Weidner. Second hour tonight, coming up on Offplanet Radio on wolfspiritradio.com. Sasha Christie, UK UFO experiencer and UK director of ICAR. And she will be here to talk about her experiences. She's always brisk, always refreshing, and always a lot of fun and very informative as well. And with that, I want to bring up my guest right now and welcome to Offplanet Radio for the first time. Very glad to have you here. Jay Weidner, welcome to Offplanet Radio.
Hey, it's good to be here, Randy.
Hey, it's great to have you on. Yeah, and I owe our mutual friend Jerry a thanks, some props for setting this up. You may be one of the most requested guests I've had in a long time. I got a lot of questions, and people are going, wow. So you have a lot of projects. The sweep of your work over the years, Jay, is stunning when I look back on it. You're a conspiracy investigator, researcher, filmmaker, writer, and especially dear to my heart, you are a specialist in hermetics and alchemy. And where that all blends in, I'd like to start with maybe, how does it all tie into 2012? Let's just be timely here, and we'll get this out of the way, and then we can go where we're going to go.
Well, I think that what's weird about my narrative is that it should be wildly incongruent with the different subject matters that I'm into. Yet somehow there's sort of I found some kind of way to wend them all together into one kind of cohesive narrative, which I guess is why people like to listen to me. And so every single thing that we talk about on its own seems completely wild and crazy, and then when we talk about it in toto, to some people it sounds like we're out of our mind, because every single subject that I look into is just another facet of this giant diamond of reality, and I'm just interested in the facets that are way out on the fringe, where I think I can see the perimeter a little better. So I choose to be a fringe dweller only because the view is better.
Well, I think mainstream's moving toward you very rapidly right now. I don't know anymore that this is so much fringe as it's just the landscape that's coming into view.
Well, I know that's true because I recently, and this is going to come as a shock to people, I've recently been actually given a job. I haven't had a job in years. I didn't even know what a job was. But I've actually taken a job, and I am directing the programming of a gigantic new emerging online network that's financed in the gazillions. And they're letting me run the show. And so far I've had, I'm starting 2 different shows. It's a video network, but we're going into all areas of consciousness and going to create a driving force that, with the right financial backing, which it has, I contend to you and to the audience listening, is going to push this thing over the top until, what will be odd out there in the mainstream will be thinking that 19 Arabs did 9/11, or that that they will be the odd men out, and everyone will just break up laughing. That's my prediction. In 5 years, the people who are kowtowing to the company line right now, when they speak in 5 years, everyone will bust out laughing, like they're the person that didn't get the joke, and I think that's actually happening at a much faster rate than anyone can understand or realize. My stepson is a Hollywood producer. He produces TV shows down in Hollywood, and he was called in about 6 months ago to a meeting of the History Channel, the Discovery Channel, the Learning Channel, all these cable channels, to hear what kind of programming that they were looking for. And so he told me he was going to this meeting. I said, well, dude, call me when you get out. I want to hear what they're saying, So he goes to this meeting, and he comes out, and he calls me on his cell, and he says, well, you know what? And I said, what? He said, you know what they're looking for? And I said, what? He said, they're looking for you. I said, what do you mean? He said, everything that they were talking about was your subjects, fringe subjects, Alchemy, Denver Airport, the Georgia Guidestones, Nostradamus, Stanley Kubrick, all of those subjects came up, he said. And I said, wow. And I think what they're doing is they're going to the YouTube and the internet, and they're looking at what the instant drivers are. Yeah,
and they're seeing that people are actually interested in this.
Exactly, because I can tell you that, I got almost 1 million hits on Google, and my internet traffic for my interviews is just, it's incredible. Even I'm stunned. I only got into this to promote a couple of videos, and had no idea that I was going to turn into some kind of sensation on the internet. It was not my intention. But right now it's skyrocketing, and that reputation and my new movie Shasta landed me this job of actually creating a network with this kind of programming with high budgets, not low budgets like we're used to in our world. Our alternative world is basically scraping by with whatever camera you got and whatever
scissors and tape,
software you got.
Tape. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. And I don't want what I want is.
But it's time, and
we're
seeing that more and more now. This movement, I'm seeing it. some people that I work with as well are starting to notice that it's bubbling up, there's interest, and there's actually people that look like they're going to put money to this.
Well, they are, and what I'm hoping is that I know, I'm not bragging, but I just know that this network I'm going to be working for, which is called Gaiam TV, is going to be a huge success. And I really hope, I really do, that other millionaires and people with money, whoever they are, decide that they want to go in competition with us. I want 5 or 6 of us running against each other, making each of us better.
Healthy, yes.
Yeah, and then what I want is for the fringe dwellers like your show, I want you guys to keep going towards the fringe. So you're liberated from the past things that you were covering and go even further now.
I've determined to become more fringe as I go along. I think that's the only route to go. Let me ask you a question. You kind of touched on something that I'm interested in. A lot of your background is in alchemy, and it's a subject that interests me a lot, and I know it's woven through your work, certainly your work going back to the Cross of Henday. Are we seeing an alchemical transformation via these new media platforms that are in our face now?
Well, that's a great question. Fulcanelli, the alchemist that I study, was an enigmatic, anonymous guy. He supposedly left the world after he succeeded in making the elixir of life in 1929 or 1930, somewhere around there. But there's a great story that his student, Eugene Cancelet, tells, where in 1953, he received, in fact, this story is the story that the Harry Potter movies came from. This is a true story by Fulcanelli's student. And he received one day in the mail an aristocratically handwritten letter with a seal telling him to go to the Seville train station in Spain. Just like Harry Potter got a letter to go to the train station.
Yeah.
And Eugene Cancelet goes to his train station. He's picked up out there by 2 guys. He's blindfolded, and he's taken into a limousine, and he's driven up into the Pyrenees. And he finally stops the car, he takes off his blindfold, and he's in a gigantic castle just like Harry Potter, and everyone dresses in medieval clothing, he says. And he's shown up to a room in the castle where there's a lab. And he's sort of bewildered by this whole thing. He doesn't understand what's going on. And he futz around with the lab and everything. And then one day, a few days after he's there, the door opens and there's Fulcanelli. Only instead of being, he'd have to be 110 because he was 80 when he left this world, he now looked to be the same age as Cancelet, about 50. And in that castle, he was told that there was a group of ascended light masters, people who have lived here a long time, who are, I'm giving some inside information that I've received from my travels in France here, but you asked the question, so, and he received the information, which I have confirmed. I know it sounds a little wacky here, but there is a breakaway Masonic group that broke away from the Freemasons in the 1700s. And they are the top 13 branches of a 46-degree Freemasonry, leaving the bottom 33 degrees as the profane Masonry. And these 13 guys are afraid of the 33-degree guys, because the 33-degree guys are reckless and don't understand the esoteric teachings, and so they're hiding from them in every way they can. But in order to affect conscious change, they had to find a way to affect conscious change without interacting in the world, because they knew that their secrets, mostly the secret of the elixir of life, was being pursued by these profane dudes that are running the world right now. And so this group of people in this castle somewhere in the Pyrenees, and I've looked for this castle, I never found it, seek out conscious people and affect their lives and begin changing things for them, Fulcanelli being one of them. And this is all done to upend the 33-degree guys and to defeat them by changing our consciousness. And so they have let secrets out, very secrets that the Illuminati can't undo, like the internet. And they're now, 2012 is the year that, it's the year that I got hired to run a network, is also the year that this change is about to take place, to where it goes through Schopenhauer's three. Schopenhauer has, his idea, the three ways that an idea permeates into culture.
Yeah.
First, it's ridiculed, then it's ignored, and then it's, oh yeah, well, sure, we do that all the time. And that's where we're at. We're heading right into, oh yeah, sure, we knew it all the time. What are you talking about? Of course, that's going on. Then it's going to be, and the problem here is that if the people listening think that that's where it's going to end, it's not, because then it's just time for us to ratchet up to the next one. Just because people start agreeing on a certain set of things that are going on right now, which they wouldn't even have thought of 5 years ago, doesn't mean that as soon as that becomes normal, we can't continue to ratchet it out, because that's what we really have to do. We're seeking a kind of a consciousness, a collective wisdom is what's going on via the internet. Knowledge, information becomes knowledge, and then knowledge becomes wisdom. And the internet is following that pattern exactly. We're at the 20-year anniversary of the internet going out into the public, that is. It was earlier a Pentagon mission.
Right, yeah.
But, and for like 15, 20 years, the internet was just a lot of information, and most of it wrong. And now there's certain websites that people go to where they're trusting the person who's aggregating the information, who's rejecting the false information and accepting. And these sites aren't perfect, but they're the knowledge. That's now the formation of knowledge. The taking all this loose information and aggregating it into these aggregate sites. Now we've now passed into knowledge. Now we have sites that we trust. We don't have to spend our days scanning the web. We can just go to a few sites, get our information, and now we're using our time more wisely. Now the next thing that's going to happen, which is really just starting right now, is the knowledge is going to turn to wisdom. So right now we're finding out that we're totally screwed. That's the one thing that the whole world is.
I was hoping you weren't going to say that, but okay.
Yeah, but we are. We now all accept pretty much, unless you're bought in the system or you're an idiot, that we're screwed. That the dollar's going to crash, that the economy is going to fall apart, that systems are breaking down everywhere. And people are out of work, and pretty soon there's going to be a food crisis, and so now we have to okay, now we have the knowledge. We know that we're ruled by a nasty cabal of people. What are we going to do about it? That's now the question. The question is, we don't need to attack anyone. We don't need to criticize anyone. We don't need to complain, because that's just for what whiners do. The question now is, okay, what are we going to do? We got control of the situation. We have the knowledge. What are we going to do as a people?
And at the same time, as we're sitting here going, we're screwed, on one level, I don't feel that way, because I recognize that the crash of this system simply means the rise of something else. And if we follow that 3-point process and we get to wisdom, we now have the tools, plus we have this ascending consciousness stream that's been building for a long time.
Yep.
You and I are of the same generation, and I can't help but think that, another part of your work, which is Stanley Kubrick, I saw 2001 when I was probably about 13 years old. I will say that in my life, and I've seen a lot of films, that was probably very much a door opening for me. I didn't know what to do with it when I saw it. I didn't have the sophistication to process it. But over the years, 2001 became a touchstone, and I began more and more to stream through that imagery and realize that film marked a point where consciousness was beginning to shift.
That's right. It was the turning point. It was 1968. There were riots in the streets of almost every major city on Earth. It was, assassination of Kennedy, Bobby, and Martin Luther King, and the Chicago riots. And it was the year that everybody collectively, like a cloud, disappeared around everybody. I was 15 and I got drugged to it by a girlfriend, and I never got over that movie ever. And the movie itself, of course, is about the very thing that we're discussing, which is this consciousness change. As if Kubrick, the artist, was telegraphing to us that this was going to happen when we, at the end of our lives, and knowing almost that our generation was going to be the generation that was going to midwife this thing through, and hopefully the next generation will take the bennies that we are creating right now, or we are going to create, because we haven't started yet. Our job hasn't really started. We're just getting the word out. Now the work starts. That's what's really
isn't that weird? It's been like this really long gestation period where a lot of us went off and had normal lives and did normal things. And it feels to me like, certainly post-2001, after 9/11, something shifted again, and the consciousness ramped up another level.
Yeah, what was funny about 9/11, I knew the day that it happened, who did it, and everything. And I'd been studying all of this stuff for so long. I got an email from a famous guy who was all freaked out. And he said, oh my God. And I thought about it. I knew his email was being watched, especially on that day. And I thought all day long about how to respond, and I responded to him, and I could tell you what I responded, but it was perfectly spot on. And so what 9/11 did with me was, I had known about the conspiracy, but I didn't know, and I knew that they were going to do something. I knew that something was going to happen. They were going to do something. It was either going to be a nuclear power plant doing something, or some kind of trick was going to happen. But I didn't know what. But I have to say that for all the years before 9/11, I pondered what trick they were going to do one day to try to seize power. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought of the audacity of 9/11. And just the sheer audacity and the thinking that they could pull something off that big and get away with it. Just thinking that they could get away with it. And they did, of course. For now.
For now, yeah. It's a huge event, but that's what it took. It took something that not only signaled between themselves, but traumatized the public to a point where they would begin to accept what they wanted to do next. It was mass trauma on a global scale.
Yeah, it was. And, 7 years and 7 days after that day, the same exact neighborhood engineered the crash. And it came from the same exact neighborhood that that the Twin Towers crashed. The same exact people were involved. And, it's like, wow. I mean, they double dipped on us.
And yet at the same time, it feels like almost spiritual jujitsu occurred, because there's this leverage that's happened in the consciousness movement. And I don't know if they counted on the fact that there was this bubbling movement. There was this, I call them the gigantic consciousness sleeper cell, people who were somewhat awake but probably still enjoying their yuppie lifestyles, who all of a sudden have that holy fuck moment, and they just go, wow.
Yep. Catastrophe is what is consciousness. The rising of consciousness always follows a catastrophe. And, there's nothing more conscious raising than a divorce or someone close dying. It is, you come to a crossroads, and, it's either I'm going to shut down and turn into a vegetable, or I'm going to become more conscious. And a lot of people shut down. Alcohol rates are higher than ever. Prescription pill rates are higher than ever. But, and there's a lot of walking dead out there. But at the same time, the higher the numbers of people waking up go, the more people will wake up. It's a geometric progression that can't be denied or stopped or anything.
Was this something that you got clues of when you began your very long and arduous task of working with the Cross of Henday?
Yeah, because it was also talking about this, about how there was, going to be this shift right around this time period. And it's from across 400 years old, created by one of these 13 Masons that I was talking about. These, I don't know what you want to call them, Brotherhood or the Ascended Masters. I hate to sound so New Agey, but, that the New Age ideas came from these truths.
Yes.
And so it's, if you repeat back, they've been taken and warped by all sorts of charlatans that are out there all over the place. And, but I don't come from any, I don't channel, I'm not into it. I just read a lot and study a lot and travel a lot. And so I'm very, very much a practical person. Don't really, go in for, I'm a true skeptic. In other words, I hear the story about the castle in the Pyrenees. I go to the Pyrenees and start searching for it, trying to find the road from Seville and how many hours it took for him to drive and getting into the neighborhood of where he might have been. So that I'm a practical person. I don't really, I believe there's a spiritual world and it's there, but I also realize that I could become a crackpot and start, spouting out all sorts of nonsense and probably make a lot more money than I make. But I just, the only premium I have is the truth, and the Cross of Henday is, one of the most incredible experiences of my life, because it taught me that there was not only a secret society that had incredible knowledge of our universe, but that, it could also tell the future somehow. And that cracked my atheist journalist mind and turned me into something else.
Which was basically an embrace of a wider spiritual universe?
Yeah, and the belief that, I can't see infrared and I can't see ultraviolet. It doesn't mean they don't exist.
Right.
So I shed my view, my previously limited materialistic view, and now I regard actually that materialistic view as actually almost evil. An evil view. To believe that all there is what you can see, feel, and touch is almost a heresy to me. I mean, I'm not going to hang anybody for it, but I will vehemently disagree with them. Mm-hmm. And I like to take on materialists and debate them, because I usually destroy them. And they're very haughty and all full of themselves.
This seems to be the great argument right now. I do a lot of interviews, and it comes up a lot that the materialists, the secularists, a true skeptic, which is what you were and I was as well, examines things from the standpoint of a possibility rather than excluding the possibility.
Right.
But we have the closed-mindedness out there that rejects out of hand any system that has an embrace of a spiritual component to our being and to our world.
Yeah, well, it's a serious threat to them, and most of them are making money in universities and things to keep the party line, and so they've seen what happens to professors who break from the party line, and they don't want that to happen to them, and they get caught in a model space that they can't get out of, and so. They may even secretly agree with us. You never know. Mm-hmm. But they can't shake that in public.
They're protecting their system and projecting their outward appearances for that reason.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, I will say this, and I have not seen any of them that were very good at debating. Not really. They can't really defend their turf very well. I have never never talked to Dawkins. He might actually be someone who can actually stand their ground, but most of them I found don't do a very good job of standing their ground. So I don't know how firm their belief systems really are.
The tide turned. I mean, it took us from the time of Einstein nearly 60 to 70 years to embrace what relativity really was, and then we begin to get the quantum physics aspects, which go into non-location, and we have this entire ontological view of a universe that's not static, that's not a clockwork, that's not Newton's mechanical universe, and appears very much to be something that gets real spooky, and we go, whoa, that looks a lot like spirituality.
And that's what it is. And it's just a dimension of, basically the word we use to describe the dimension that surrounds our dimension that we're immersed in but that we cannot see is spiritual. And so I actually got through understanding the spirit because I've always been interested in mathematics and geometry. And when I finally understood, kind of the Pythagorean school of sacred geometry, and I understood, that dimensions have form and shape, and what that form and shape is. When I finally realized that, then I saw the spiritual inside everything, all living things, and it's just the chi that surrounds us, and that's what alchemy is trying to do. It's trying to find a way to condense chi and get it into a large amount, and then to take it, and then that lets you live for a few hundred years until you take it again. And it's not really all that difficult of a scientific concept to understand, but first you have to make the leap to understanding what chi or ki is. And when you understand what that is, then you realize that it can be. That's what you're doing when you eat an apple or salad. You're getting the chi out of it. And so when you take like a superfood, like I take a kamut that grows in a volcanic surroundings, and it's the equivalent of 75 salads. Right? I take one every day. I take a spoonful of this stuff every day. Okay, 75 salads I'm getting, the chi, the life force of 75 salads. Yeah. Okay, so that's basic. Anyone who's doing superfoods is basically doing alchemy. And so when you start going down that path, it doesn't seem to be a very difficult one to get to the step, it must be possible to super concentrate chi and then take it, and that's what alchemy is.
How does Hermeticism play into this, and how would you define Hermeticism in the mix of what you've been doing?
Well, the Hermetics, what the Hermetics guys, of course, are the followers of Hermes, or also they're called hermits. And what they do, or what they were known for, actually weren't known for it at all. It was actually a secret. But what they did was they would go from town to town, people called them hermits, and they would go into a village in medieval Europe, and they would make things better. I know it seems kind of weird, but just they would come in and they would teach and they would guide, sort of like Gandalf would in Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And a little bit, just like Gandalf, a little bit manipulative, trying to awaken their consciousness through stories and through architecture, making them build the churches in certain kinds of ways and things. And so the ultimate goal of the Hermeticists or the hermits or these people who understand the truth is to get the human race to a place where their consciousness is fully open and aware, and then to reintroduce the Philosopher's Stone. But only when the Illuminati has been defeated and the human race has realizes all the mistakes that it's made. Only at that point can we then move to the next, which is the next phase. It's coming. It'll be here soon.
So they don't possess the Philosopher's Stone, in your opinion, right now?
The Illuminati?
Yeah,
no.
Right.
No, they do not. They have all sorts of things that they do, but no, they do not. And because they have gone profane or anti-spiritual or pro-materialistic, they can't even conceive of it. I mean, you can't forget it. They can't. I have had more rich friends than anybody I know. in this business. And I now know the reason that I've had so many people that have had a lot of money want to be my friend is because they think that I'm going to find the Philosopher's Stone and then I'm going to give it to them. All right? And make no bones. I could tell you the people's names and you would know them. Right? And it took me years to understand why these people were all shining up to me. And I'm not going to give it to them. But the Philosopher's Stone is being created even as we speak. And it will be out. And what I love it about this whole thing is that because we're in the Kali Yuga, or the Iron Age, it's probably going to be Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt or somebody who's going to represent the company that's selling this stuff. And you'll probably be able to buy it for like $4. And it'll be capitalism, the greed, which will push this out. I really believe this.
So this is going to be something that we can actually hold in our hands, something that we use, something that's going to foment this transformational process in us.
Yeah, it was around. It was called called the Passover cake. And before doctors were around, they had it, and it was a little white powder that the local blacksmith, i.e. alchemist, would give you and your family. And whenever you felt sick, you just take a little bit of it and put it in some water and drink it. It was just a low form of the stone. A high form of the stone will cause, you can duplicate gold and stuff, but it causes a huge shift in consciousness where you literally can see the past and the future. And so there's different degrees of it. And we're right on the edge of creating this thing. I'm not, but I know and keep tabs on everyone.
I believe it's out there, and I believe that you struck something very interesting. That's a whole other conversation. Yeah. When you talk about end times or the end of time, you're not talking about the end of the world, are you?
No, I'm talking about the end of our view of time. Our view of time is a construct. It's how we land. It's how I go on the radio at the right time. It's how the airplane takes off at the right time. It's how you can have a date for dinner. It's a construct. It's not real. Linear time is not real. It's a way to make our life easier. And we constructed it when we became, quote, civilized, unquote. We created a whole bunch of other goodies at that time, like agriculture and eating grains and all sorts of things, slavery, sugar.
That moved us away from kind of the hunter-gatherer model.
Yeah, and that in the hunter-gatherer model, there's only circular time, which is the seasons, and life and death. And we left that and what I call a polychronic life, and we moved into a monochronic life. At the same time that we moved into monochronic life, we started worshiping what I call the Saturnian gods, the monotheistic gods. And this might all be just an accident. It might be that the Earth is heating up because the sun is heating up, and 2,000, 3,000 years ago, desertification started spreading across the Middle East, and things got scarce, and we had to start growing food in cultural settings and moving into cities because things were getting harder and harder to live out because the area was turning into a desert essentially. And so everyone was escaping to get near the water, near some fresh water. So the Earth is getting hotter, and we don't know why. And Across the Hende talks about it. But we really don't know why. And it's been getting hotter for probably about 2,000 years, and this might be the driving force behind a lot of this horror that we've been going through. And but at the same time, it may be us that's causing it by deforestation. There's no doubt that stripping land of trees that don't grow back is detrimental to the environment. So I think mankind is responsible a little bit for the global warming, and I think it's also the sun is also heating up, and I think this is the driving force behind things. But at the same time, I think that if we could just take it easy, if we had the Philosopher's Stone and it allowed us to live, say, to be 120 or 150 in good health, I think that we would have a new view of the world and life, and we wouldn't want to fight in wars, and we wouldn't want any pollution, and it would just be a natural desire for a cleaner, better world. And we would get more spiritual because we'd have more time to contemplate. There'd be less of a hurry. And we could break down the monochronic structure of our life. And yeah, we're probably going to be a little bit sloppy when taking off from the airport and stuff, but at the same time, it'll be a massive relief.
Well, I'm kind of believing that we may not need airports in the near future.
That's kind of really right.
Yeah, I mean, if we break through, we know that there are free energy sources out there.
That's right.
And we know, and I've interviewed people, and you can take with how many grains of salt, we know that teleportation devices probably already exist, that they've probably already been deployed, and that we're perfectly capable of transporting ourselves without consuming what they call fossil fuel and all the other things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's what Richard Dolan calls the breakaway civilization.
Right, exactly, which goes into the secret space program and what the hell are they really doing out there on Mars, because
that's right.
They're not really hiding it real well right now.
No, I think, in that regard, I think, there's factions that don't know what's going on, and there's factions that do know what's going on, and the factions that don't know what's going on are actually still playing by sort of legitimate rules. Mm-hmm. That's what curiosity is on Mars. This is the faction that doesn't know anything about what's going on.
Yeah,
we're going to send a ship to Mars and see what's going on. It's like, dude,
clueless
stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
But, and they're really trying to earnestly be scientific, in an old sense. And they're not going to see it even if it was right in front of them. That's just the way it is. It's just they don't have the consciousness to see it. They don't believe it, and then they won't see it. So they can see a square building on Mars from a satellite, look at it, and say, oh, well, that could be a crystal growth. I mean, it's really amazing to watch and listen to these people and how they defend it. And I don't know what to say about that. It's really truly what Nostradamus said would happen, where it would be the great bifurcation, where we're breaking down into two completely separate species almost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I got a couple of questions here that are coming off the chat room. What is your view on the new movies like Prometheus and also the public show of the new Mars rover?
Yeah, Curiosity, yeah. Well, pretty much what I just said. It's a faction of NASA that really doesn't know what's going on, and they're really earnestly trying to find stuff out, and they got told to probably land that thing in the least interesting area on Mars.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Away
from
Prometheus,
I love Prometheus, and a lot of people didn't like it. Had a lot too much stuff in it. I thought the whole bit about Jesus as an alien and we killed him was a little over the top. But I love the Archons, and I thought, I love Ridley Scott and I love his direction, and I can understand people that say it was over the top and all that.
I think he baked a lot into that movie, and I think it's difficult to separate a lot of it. To me, it felt a little scattered, but at the same time, I think he was going for something that he didn't develop completely.
Well, I mean, it's an homage to 2001. Mm-hmm. The robot had Hal's voice. His name was David. And the plot was similar to the plot of 2001. And I think, actually, that movie might be my fault. I think that Ridley he was trying to make a movie that you had to decipher, like a la Stanley Kubrick, which the rest of his movies you really don't have to. So he's changed the way he's making movies. He's putting things in that you have to go look and see. It was an attempt by Ridley Scott for greatness, I think.
Oh, somebody else asked what you thought of John Carpenter, the Mars movie.
John Carter?
John Carter, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I thought it was, not a great movie. Some of the acting was a little stiff, but I liked it. I liked some of the stuff. I love the fact that caves are hyperdimensional portals, and I like the bad guys, the Archons, in it, and I like the fact that they had just finished raping the environment of Mars, and now they were leaving to come to Earth, and this is being 1880 when the movie takes place. And, that stuff was great.
And that was in Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Yeah.
I thought so. I seem to recall reading that when I was a kid, because I was a huge Burroughs
fan. We all did.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wanted to touch on something, because I want to, before And we do not have enough time tonight. The questions are coming in. I need to get you back again for a longer stretch. But one of the things I wanted to touch on tonight was your take on the Aurora shootings, the Batman massacre, and what you think that signaled. Because my sense, and a lot of people that have looked at this, is that this was another signaling event. It was the timing, a lot of the signatures on this thing were just completely creepy.
Well, they were. It's still creepy, and there's obviously a cover-up going on of some kind in Colorado, because we can't get anything out of anybody. But, it's interesting because I was emailed a few weeks before Batman came out and told by an anonymous person who was working on the effects in Batman, The Dark Knight Rises. And this anonymous person told me that Christopher Nolan worshipped Stanley Kubrick, and that he knew about my work. And then he said that I've had to watch this movie like 50 times because I'm working on it, and I'm telling you that it's loaded with stuff, Jay. You're gonna love it, right? So I was planning on going to see it on July 20th. When it opened, because of this email I got. And, of course, it happened 15 minutes, after midnight, mountain time. The guy walked into the theater, or somebody walked into the theater. We don't know who. And nobody will ever be able to identify him as the guy actually firing. And we know that there was possibly another person involved because somebody got up and opened the door.
Yes.
And we also, and a gas canister, a tear gas canister came from the other direction. We also know that there were two stories, initial stories. First story was that they had seen the guy in the theater and thought he was a member of the SWAT team. The second story was that they found him in his car. Also, there was a second gas mask found about 150 yards away from the door, and there's also a security camera showing the blood leading into the theater. So I personally believe that I think it was done for a number of reasons. One, of course, was Second Amendment. Get those crazy cowboys out in Colorado, make them look crazy. And but the other thing is that is this movie, and I think everyone's missing a very important part. Is it possible that they wanted to dampen enthusiasm for people to go see this movie? And my answer is absolutely, because Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Rises is probably one of the most intelligent movies made ever, and it is a complete and sheer warning that our government is going to be complicit in a chaotic breakdown and destruction of the entire United States, and that's what the plot of the movie is. And it's incredible. I mean, really, it's an incredible movie. And I don't know what to say except
Isn't it interesting that the movie before this that Christopher Nolan did was Inception, which was a movie that told us a whole lot of truth about mind control, and dream warfare, which is a subject that we've covered on this show a lot. And even also, breaking down the constructs of our consciousness before our very eyes in that film.
And he also put out the movie Prestige right after 9/11, which was about a magician's tricks, how you can fool everybody with all these magician's tricks, because he was showing us that 9/11 was a magician's trick, and he was trying to show us how magic works. And so he's a very, very interesting guy, and I don't think I've ever seen a filmmaker more in control of their material. Nobody. I mean, Inception was the most complicated script I have ever seen, and he carried it off. And Dark Knight Rises has got to be the second most complicated script I've ever seen, and he also carries it off. So I don't know. The guy has got raising filmmaking to a whole new level.
Jay, timing is our enemy, because unfortunately I only booked you for 1 hour for this show, and I want to talk a little bit about your upcoming project, which is coming out, called Shasta. And I'll post some links on the website with this as well for people to go take a look at it. But this looks like you've really upped the level a little bit. This movie features some Alexander Polinsky, who was in the TV series Charles in Charge, and Neil Donald Walsh. This movie looks a lot to me like something that's going to go over well in theaters.
Well, so far the focus groups, the people really like it. It's the story of the return of Kalki, the 10th avatar of Vishnu, who is prophesied to come at the end of time and destroy the purveyors of lies. And so, I wanted Kalki to come my whole life, and he never came, so I made the movie. So maybe now he'll come. And I just, the basic idea was, okay, if this guy really did come to, destroy the Illuminati, and how would he do it without firing a shot, right? And that kind of became the quest for the movie. And so the movie, it's a love story, and it's an adventure, and it's an initiation of sorts. It's probably got some homages to 2001. I wish I had Christopher Nolan's budgets, but I don't have those kinds of budgets. But I think on the money that I had, I think it's all up on the screen, and people in the movie business have told me that it looks like a movie that cost 5 or 6 times what I spent. And that's the greatest compliment I could get. So it's a long, hard struggle. We're just finishing the effects right now. It'll be out in the theaters and everywhere starting near the end of this year. It's all about what 2012 was about, where we also change Hollywood, where we take Hollywood's medium and forms and we put our kinds of subject matter in it, and then they are forced to come our way. That's how we have to deal with things. We have to start leading in every way.
So it kind of goes back to my initial question, which had to do with the transformative aspects of art, alchemy, and film, which we've lived under those conditions in our generation. And I have to say that nobody has, well, up until Chris Nolan, I don't think anybody did it with such great effect as Stanley Kubrick, and for so long.
Well, I think Kubrick's films right now still stand above Nolan's. Nothing can beat 2001: A Space Odyssey, as far as I'm concerned, as far as its magic and alchemy. So, I just think that film can change consciousness, and that's why I've chosen it as my art. That's all.
Do you believe, based on what we saw with what we got of Eyes Wide Shut, that towards the end of his life, Stanley Kubrick was perhaps a man who was attempting to rapidly purge himself of the things that he knew and the things that he had been a part of in his early career?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. It was definitely trying to tell us something very, very, very important. I believe that it's one of his most autobiographical films, actually. I believe that he got suckered into a secret society, and he had to get money. Money is to movies what painting is to art, and he needed money. You have to have money, and so you got to go where the money is. It's one of the most unfortunate things about movies, and one of the most fortunate things about the reduction in costs of movies now via the high technology is we don't have to go begging to mobsters. And I've had to go begging to mobsters in my life to get money to make movies, and it's not a pleasant experience. And I'm sure Stanley just decided to join a secret society and just get all the way to the top and not have to deal with the low lives. And he found out that the people on top were just as low as the low lives. And they are, and maybe even worse. So, it was a tough experience for him, I'm sure. And it nearly cost him his life, I think. It may have
cost him his life. I tend to think that something very strange happened there, and I also don't think we got the movie we would have gotten had he lived and been able to make the final cut.
No, we did not. Absolutely, we did not get the movie that he made. I know that for certain because I received an anonymous phone call from one of his assistants who told me the movie that he had edited was substantially different than the movie that got released. So,
was that true in your understanding, was that true of his other films as well, that some of the best stuff wound up on the cutting room floor?
No. His films were very, very much his own. The only one that isn't is Spartacus and Eyes Wide Shut, because they re-edited it. And Spartacus, he was only the director. But all the rest of his films, he was in tight control of. And he has a certain editing style that is absent from Eyes Wide Shut. So, I mean, Stanley never used dissolves very much, yet Eyes Wide Shut is filled with dissolves. And that tells me that somebody's coming in and putting time. You put a dissolve in to solve a kind of an abrupt cut. Yes. And there's so many dissolves in that movie that Stanley would have just screamed. He thought dissolves were the sign of a poor filmmaker. And so he hardly ever uses dissolves. When he uses them very effectively. And there's like probably 50 dissolves in Eyes Wide Shut. So, you know, so it's definitely a fingerprint that somebody besides Stanley tampered with the film.
Jay, I wish we had more time because there's so much I wanted to talk to you about that we didn't get to, but we talked about what we were supposed to, and I enjoyed the conversation, and I think the audience has as well. I know there's a lot of questions out there, folks, that we didn't get to. Some of them were answered, and when you go back and listen to the archive of this, you'll probably have the answer to your question. But please come back again, Jay. I would love to do another show with you, maybe a little closer to the time that the theatrical release of Shasta is coming.
Sure, it'd be great.
That'd be great. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, and I look forward to talking to you again very soon, my friend.
All right, Randy. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thanks. Good night. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with my guest, Sasha Christie. I got to connect with her, and we will be back on the other side of Off-Planet Radio.
This is Off-Planet Radio.